His grandfather worked 50-hour weeks at the steel mill for 41 years, never complained, never questioned it. He came home exhausted, handed his paycheck to his wife, ate dinner in silence, and did it all again the next day. When someone asked him why, he looked at them like they were speaking another language. "That's what men do," he said. End of discussion. His father did the same thing in an office instead of a factory. Different setting, same arrangement. Work hard, provide, sacrifice your dreams, your health, your time. In exchange, you get respect, a family, a sense of purpose, and the quiet understanding that your efforts matter. Now meet Daniel. He's 31. He watched both of these men give everything to this unspoken deal. He watched his grandfather die 2 years into retirement, body broken from decades of labour. He watched his father get divorced at 54, lose half his assets, and sit alone in a one-bedroom apartment wondering what all those sacrifices actually bought him. Daniel makes good money. He's educated, he's capable, and he has made a decision that would have been unthinkable to the men who came before him. He's not signing the contract. What I'm about to share with you explains why millions of men are quietly making the same choice, and why almost nobody understands what's actually driving this shift. For generations, there existed an unwritten understanding between men and society. Nobody called it a contract. Nobody wrote it down. But everyone knew the terms. The deal went something like this. Men would sacrifice their comfort, their safety, and often their emotional well-being in service of others. They would work jobs they didn't love. They would suppress their vulnerabilities. They would put their family's needs above their own desires. They would be the protectors, the providers, the ones who went down with the ship. In return, they received something essential to male psychology: respect, appreciation, and a clearly defined role that gave their struggles meaning. When a man worked himself to exhaustion, he wasn't just earning money, he was earning his place. His worth was tied to his usefulness, and as long as he remained useful, he belonged. This arrangement had problems. Serious ones. It limited women's opportunities. It forced men into emotional suppression. It created rigid expectations that hurt everyone. The critiques of this old system are valid and well documented. But here's what most people completely overlook. When we dismantled the problematic parts of this contract, we also dismantled the parts that gave men a reason to sign it, and we never replaced them with anything else. Consider this for a moment. We told men that their traditional role was outdated, even harmful. We said that providing financially wasn't special anymore because women could do that themselves. We questioned whether protection was necessary or just patronising. We challenged the very idea that male sacrifice deserved particular recognition. All of that questioning might have been necessary. But did anyone stop to ask what men were supposed to do instead? What would make the sacrifices worthwhile now? What was the new offer? The answer, for many men, has been silence. And silence isn't a compelling reason to sign anything. Let me introduce you to Marcus. He's 34, works in IT, and earns a comfortable living. By traditional metrics, he should be looking to settle down, start a family, climb the ladder. Instead, Marcus lives in a modest apartment, works exactly 40 hours a week, and spends his free time on hobbies that fulfill him. He dates occasionally, but avoids serious commitment. He saves money, but isn't killing himself to maximize income. He's opted out of the race entirely. When his parents ask when he's going to grow up, he gives vague answers. What he doesn't tell them is that he's done the math, and the math doesn't work anymore. Watch how this connects to the larger pattern. Marcus isn't lazy. He isn't afraid of hard work. He simply can't find a logical reason to make the sacrifices his father made. The traditional rewards have either disappeared or become uncertain, while the costs remain brutally high. Marriage once offered men consistent companionship, domestic support, physical intimacy, and social standing. Today, those benefits are no longer guaranteed. Divorce rates hover around 40%. In those divorces, men typically lose custody of children, pay significant alimony and child support, and face financial devastation. Marcus has watched 3 friends go through this. He's watched them lose their homes, their savings, and their daily relationship with their children. Meanwhile, the responsibilities haven't decreased at all. Men are still expected to earn more, pay for dates, provide financial stability, and carry the burden of pursuing and initiating relationships. The expectations remain, but the payoff has become a gamble rather than a guarantee. So, Marcus made a quiet calculation. If the upside is uncertain and the downside is catastrophic, why go all in? Why sacrifice the way his grandfather did when the reciprocal part of the deal is evaporated? The part nobody mentions is that Marcus isn't bitter. He isn't angry. He's just rational. And that rational disengagement might be more threatening to the old social order than any amount of visible rebellion. How do you apply this? If you're a woman wondering why men seem less interested in commitment, start by understanding that you're not competing with other women. You're competing with a man's peaceful, drama-free, financially stable single life. That's the baseline you have to beat, not by demanding he give it up, but by genuinely offering something better. And if you're a man resonating with Marcus's calculation, understand that opting out is a legitimate choice, but make sure you're choosing freedom rather than just avoiding fear. There's a difference between intentional independence and hiding from risk. Now we need to go deeper because the cost-benefit analysis is only part of the story. There's something more fundamental happening underneath the surface. Meet James. He's 28, recently promoted to a management position, and by all external measures he's thriving. But in private moments, James carries a weight that he can't quite name. It showed up most clearly during a work training session on unconscious bias. During the seminar, the facilitator made several references to toxic masculinity and the problems caused by male-dominated culture. James sat quietly, nodding along, saying the right things. But something inside him felt like it was shrinking. He looked around the room and noticed other men with the same expression. They were performing agreement while feeling erased. Here's the reality that few people want to acknowledge. For the past 2 decades, masculinity itself has been framed primarily as a problem to be solved rather than a force to be channeled. Boys in schools hear constantly about the dangers of male aggression, male entitlement, male sexuality. They rarely hear what's good about being male, what's valuable about masculine energy properly expressed. The research on this is striking. Studies on male self-esteem show significant declines over the past generation. Boys are falling behind in education at every level. Young men report increasingly high levels of purposelessness and drift. And while there are many factors involved, one consistent thread is the absence of positive masculine identity. Think about the messages men absorb constantly. Masculinity needs to be deconstructed. Male spaces are exclusionary. Traditional male roles were oppressive. Masculine traits like competitiveness and assertiveness are suspect. Even the language has shifted, where calling something manly has become almost ironic rather than complimentary. Now combine this with what we discussed earlier. You're asking men to sacrifice enormously, to work grueling jobs, to risk their financial future in marriage, to suppress their own needs for others. And in exchange, the culture offers what exactly? Suspicion of their nature, constant reminders of their historical sins, a vague sense that their very existence is part of the problem. James still performs well at work. He still dates. He still shows up. But something in him has quietly withdrawn. Not from women specifically, but from a society that seems to view him as guilty until proven innocent simply for being male. This changes everything about how we need to approach gender relations. You cannot motivate sacrifice through guilt. You cannot inspire men to give their best by constantly telling them their nature is toxic. It doesn't work that way psychologically. Human beings move toward appreciation and away from contempt. Always. How do you apply this? If you're raising sons, they desperately need to hear what's good about being male, not at the expense of respecting women, but in addition to it, they need models of masculinity that are positive rather than just warnings about what not to become. And if you're a man feeling this erosion of respect, find environments where masculine virtue is genuinely valued. They exist, even if you have to search for them. Your psychological health depends on it. Let's take this even further, because we still haven't reached the root of the issue. Every culture throughout human history has answered one crucial question for its men. What are you here for? What role do you play? What makes your existence meaningful? For most of recorded time, the answer was some version of protector, provider, builder, defender. Men cleared land, constructed civilizations, fought in wars, created infrastructure. These roles were demanding and often brutal, but they came with an undeniable sense of significance. You mattered because you contributed something irreplaceable. Sit with that for a moment. Consider what it meant, psychologically, to know exactly what you were for. Now enter the modern world. Technology has eliminated much of the physical labour that once defined male contribution. Machines do the heavy lifting. Algorithms make the decisions. Warfare is increasingly conducted by drones and specialists. The raw, physical competence that men evolved to provide has been largely automated away. Women have entered every sphere of economic life, which is genuinely good for equality and opportunity. But one side effect is that the provider role no longer distinguishes male contribution. Women can and do provide for themselves and their families. The unique value proposition men once offered has become optional rather than essential. So when a young man today asks himself what he's here for, what answer does he receive? Meet Tyler. He's 26, finished college with no clear direction, and works a series of meaningless contract jobs while spending most of his free time gaming. He's not depressed exactly. He's just adrift. When you talk to him about goals and ambitions, his eyes go slightly vacant. He shrugs a lot. Tyler is experiencing something researchers call purpose deficit, and it's reaching epidemic levels among young men. Without a clear role, without a defined contribution, without a sense that their specific qualities are needed, men struggle to generate the motivation for the sacrifices previous generations made willingly. What most people miss is that this isn't laziness in any traditional sense. Tyler isn't avoiding effort because he's weak. He's avoiding effort because nothing he can see offers a meaningful return on that effort. He's looking for a reason to engage and finding only vague suggestions to be a good person and find what makes you happy. Previous generations of men had purpose imposed on them by necessity. If you didn't work, people starved. If you didn't fight, enemies invaded. The stakes were immediate and undeniable. Modern life has removed those stakes, which is a blessing in many ways, but it left a vacuum where meaning used to be. How do you apply this? Men need to actively construct purpose now because society will no longer hand it to them. This means finding a craft to master, a community to serve, or a mission to pursue. It cannot be passive. You have to go looking for your reason to exist. The good news is that this active search often leads to deeper fulfillment than the assigned roles of the past. But it requires effort that many men haven't been taught to make. Let's pull all of this together into a coherent picture. The traditional social contract offered men a clear exchange. Sacrifice your individual desires, work hard, protect and provide, and in return receive respect, appreciation, a defined role, and meaningful purpose. For all its flaws, that contract gave generations of men a reason to contribute fully. Today, each element of that exchange has been disrupted. The benefits have become uncertain. The respect has eroded. The role has been deconstructed, and the purpose has dissolved. Meanwhile, the costs and sacrifices remain just as high, if not higher. When you understand this, male withdrawal starts making sense. It's not immaturity. It's not selfishness. It's a rational response to a broken deal. The man who chooses not to pursue traditional success isn't necessarily choosing hedonism. He might be choosing sanity. The man who avoids serious relationships isn't necessarily afraid of intimacy. He might be protecting himself from a gamble with brutal odds. The man who seems to lack ambition might actually lack only a compelling reason to sacrifice. Here's what needs to be understood by everyone who wants healthier relationships between men and women. You cannot simply demand that men uphold their traditional obligations while mocking their traditional rewards. You cannot simultaneously tell men that their contributions aren't special and wonder why they've stopped contributing. You cannot deconstruct masculinity for decades and then be surprised when men no longer feel invested in masculine roles. This isn't about returning to the past. The old contract was flawed. But moving forward requires building something new rather than just tearing down what existed before. And that building requires acknowledging that men, like all human beings, need reasons to sacrifice. They need appreciation for their efforts. They need respect for their nature. They need a sense of meaningful purpose. Without those things, the contract remains unsigned, and no amount of shaming or lecturing will change that equation. Here's where I want to leave you with something practical rather than just analytical. If you're a man who resonates with what I've described, understand that your disengagement is understandable, but ultimately insufficient. Opting out might protect you from certain risks, but it won't give you the fulfillment that comes from genuine connection and contribution. The answer isn't to sign the old contract that no longer serves you. The answer is to write a new one, with terms that actually make sense for your life. This means defining your own standards for what a relationship must offer before you commit. It means building value and purpose that exist independently of what any partner or society offers in return. It means being willing to engage fully, but only when the situation genuinely warrants it. If you're a woman trying to understand the men in your life, recognize that dismissing this shift as immaturity will only widen the gap. The men withdrawing aren't broken. They're responding to incentives. If you want a man's full investment, the question becomes, what are you offering that makes that investment worthwhile? Not what do you deserve, but what are you bringing? And for everyone watching, the larger lesson is this. Social contracts work when both sides feel they're getting something valuable. When one side feels exploited or unappreciated, they eventually walk away. That's happening now with millions of men, not through organized protest, but through quiet individual choices to disengage. The solution isn't to force anyone back to the table. It's to build a new table where both parties genuinely want to sit. The old contract is dead. The new one hasn't been written yet. And whoever figures out what that new deal looks like will have solved one of the defining challenges of our generation. That's the work that still remains.